So welcome back, everyone, to the second part of our series of Transformative Tefillah. So this one we'll talk, we'll talk about Rosh Hashanah. We'll talk about I think, what is a specific type of tefillah, a specific type or, some nature of tefillah that we really engage in on Rosh Hashanah. And again, as we were saying before, I'm drawing on Rav Pinkus's Sefer, Sha'ar Tefillah, where he outlines the different forms, the different types of tefillah, the different types of prayer. And again, we're always engaging in so many different aspects of prayer, but it helps to be able to highlight one or two or three, whatever we might actually specifically be focusing in on when it comes to a yantiv, when it comes to a certain period of time, because there's a certain power to it. I was thinking about a mashal, and again, we're all crying out, we're all davening to Hashem, but ultimately Hashem has different aspects, so to say, of Him that we are referring to, and certainly it helps us to be able to relate to that. And so, Lamashal, a person can imagine that you're trying to, let's say my children are trying to get my attention. And if they want to get my attention for one thing, so they might ask in a different way, right? If they're really in need, so they're not going to ask nicely and politely, they're going to scream. And so there are obviously different types of things that we're trying to evoke from Hashem, or trying to invoke in a relationship with Hashem. And depending on exactly what our goal is, depending on what we have in mind, so that's going to change exactly how we daven, what we daven, in the way we daven. So I think that's just one way to be able to frame it, to be able to look at it. So tonight, as we talk about Rosh Hashanah, so we're going to talk about this idea of Kriya, of calling out to Hashem, of specifically calling out to Hashem and speaking to Him. So there's in the beginning of a sefer called Sifsei Chen, a beautiful work. Really, it's introductory ideas to Hasidus and Pnimiyas Torah, and he has a beautiful story when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. So he describes how the Baal Tanya was once missing from Leil Rosh Hashanah meal. That all the students and everyone in the yeshiva were all sitting down. They were ready to start the first meal of Rosh Hashanah, and they realized that the Baal Tanya was missing. And so they sent some of the students to go find him, and they went back to shul, or they went back to the yeshiva or the room where they were davening, and they found him in a room alone, still in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, still in the middle of that first Amidah come Rosh Hashanah, the first Amidah of that night. And they saw him screaming, holding his shtender, according to some girsas, apparently not just banging on his shtender, but holding his shtender up in the air and screaming as part of the Amidah, V'yeda kol pa'ul ki ata pa'alto, that everyone should know, that every being, every item within this world should know that you are its creator. And the Maggid Mezrich commented. He said, it seems to be that the Alter Rebbe is on such a level that it's not enough that just people, that just human beings know that, but he's already at the inanimate objects, that they too need to know that Hashem created them. And I think it highlights this idea, come Rosh Hashanah, that we are just trying to bring home this idea, both for ourselves, for the world around us, for obviously the sentient beings within this world, but even the inanimate objects, that every facet of the Bria, every facet of reality, that should realize that Hashem created and creates the world, and Hashem is in complete control. And that's something we're trying to highlight to ourselves. And the truth is, when that becomes our reality, when that becomes something so real, so tangible to us, so that obviously changes how we relate to Hashem, and it changes how we talk to Him. So that's where Rav Pinkus picks up with this idea. And he says on this first page, we'll call it page 75 if you look on the top left. So he says as follows: when it comes to Kriya, when it comes to this form, this type of tefillah, of prayer that we call it calling out to Hashem. Hakriya hi tefillah shekorea adam lakadosh baruch hu mikoach hakara brura shekadosh baruch hu shomei lo. You know what this type of davening is? This type of prayer is? It's when man calls out to God from the strength of the knowledge, the clear understanding and recognition that Hashem hears him. Umitoch shebarur lo shebemidosav yisbarach lahazin l'tfilaso. That it is clear that the very nature of Hashem is that He hears and He tends His ear to our prayers. And we know Hashem can do and fulfill our request. So the idea of calling out to Hashem comes from this place and an awareness that we know He listens to us, and we know He hears us, and we know He can answer us. And he says that this is highlighted by the Mesilas Yesharim, by the Ramchal, when he describes this idea this yesod, this foundational idea when it comes to davening, when it comes to all of worship of Hashem, avodas Hashem. Hatfisa hapshuta shebemitzias Hashem yisparach itanuhi mitzias mamashes. That this very nature, the very idea that Hashem is within us, with us, the reality, it's a true reality, something that we can fully comprehend and understand in the sense that it becomes real to us. Lo pachos mikol mitzias domem somea chai omidavar ha'omdim lefanenu. It's nothing less than when we look around the world around us and we see, so this is a chair. This is obviously a chair. This is a human being I'm conversing with. And to someone who lives within this reality, so I can speak to a human being and I can also speak directly to Hashem. So that's when it becomes real. That is what he calls, that's what he describes as Kain Hashem Yisbarach Hu Metzias Chaya Amitis. Hashem is true reality, true life. Pshuta, ubrura, simple, clear. Ledaber ulikrolo. It's so clear. Hashem is so clear and evident within my life, and that's why I can speak to him. That's why I can call to him. And it's true, sometimes it could feel like it's a one-sided conversation. But the more it becomes part of my reality, that I know Hashem hears, and I know he listens, and I know he answers back. He answers my prayers. He answers, part of my conversation. So then that becomes a part of my reality, a part of how I think, a part of how I exist. And the more and more we exist that way, the more and more that becomes a reality both in our minds and our hearts. So that more and more I'm able to serve Hashem in a real way, in a truthful way. And he says that's this idea. Shehu made mamish lifnei abori yisparach shemo b'nosei nimo apalpi she'ein einav she'adam rohu. And it becomes this a person can come to this place where he can be standing there and talking, going back and forth, literally having a conversation with Hashem, standing there, whether that means we're doing so in our Amidah, whether that means we're just doing so sitting on the couch talking. It's just, back and forth, just talking casually, because it's a reality that Hashem hears me. And if Hashem hears me, I can talk to him anywhere, any place. And this highlights not just this idea that we can speak to Hashem, but if we know we can speak to Hashem, then we can speak to him about anything. As we said before, depending on exactly what I need, what I want, how I'm feeling, so that's going to depend how I speak to Hashem, right? There are different contexts in which I speak to my friends, different ways in which I speak to my family. And depending on the situation, that's how I'm going to talk to them. So of course, he says, going down this page, on page 76, he says, of course, when you call out to Hashem, when you call out to a person, so if you have in mind that you need something specific or you're looking for something specific, so you're going to call the right person. You're going to pick up the phone. If I need a plumber, I need a plumber. If I have something broken in my house that needs electric work, so I'm going to call the electrician. So he says, "V'chein inyan kriya l'Hakadosh Baruch Hu." So too, when it comes to Hashem, Hainu b'mesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu yesh atzol k'v'yachol rachamim b'inyan ploni u'b'zeh korehu lo yisparach shirachamehu. And so if I realize that I need Rahmanis, I need mercy, I need help, so I'm going to be asking for that from Hashem. I'm going to be talking to Hashem in a way that really evokes that, as opposed to just a calm way where I'm just talking to him and saying, okay, thank you so much for everything I have. That's coming from a different place, thanking Hashem, feeling so grateful for everything I have. That's going to be very, very different from that moment where all of a sudden I start calling out because I'm in need for something. I'm in need for mercy. I'm in need for help. And so that's obviously that's part of this idea about kriya, calling out, because it comes from this place of a recognition of a need to be able to reconnect, as we talked last week, not just a request for something and needing the result, but also needing that relationship, to need to feel like I'm reaching out and being heard. So part of this idea of this reality that we're talking about, with the reality and realizing that Hashem is right before us. So very much, it's very much part and parcel of the entire idea of Rosh Hashanah. As we get up to daven in Rosh Hashanah, so we start saying Hamelech, the King, because we're recognizing at that moment, we're bringing into our reality that, oh right, Hashem is here. Hashem created the world. He's recreating the world, and he'll continue to create the world. And I'm part of that reality. And it's trying to bring that awareness that Hashem is here with us now. And that's something I'm supposed to be able to carry with me through Rosh Hashanah, through all the Yamim Noraim, through Sukkot, through the rest of the year. But it starts come Rosh Hashanah. So part of the davening in preceding, or part of the paragraphs of many of the parts of the Amidah, we start off with uvachein, and thus, and so, or however you translate it. So uvachein is used. I saw the Sifsei Chaim brings down. Uvachein is also used by Esther. Queen Esther, Esther Amalka goes in, or she's saying, I'm going to go into the king, and she says, Uvachein avo el hamelech, and thus or so I will go into the king. So this idea of uvachein is said in this almost this moment of trepidation or awareness of the reality that I'm going to be standing before a real king, right? And by Esther Amalka, it's with this fear, this trepidation that what's going to be with her. But she says, I'm going to go anyway. And of course, we know that obviously come the Megillah, when we talk about the king, it's not just Achashverosh and the episode of Purim in the Megillah, but it's referring to the Ribono Shel Olam, Hashem. And all the more so when we come to Rosh Hashanah, of course, Hamelech is only Hashem. It's no confusing with Achashverosh. There's nothing hidden about it. Everything about Rosh Hashanah is the Gilui, is a revelation of Hashem. And that's this idea, Uvachein, as we start many of these paragraphs in the Amidah, Uvachein is supposed to wake me up. It's, oh my gosh, right, Esther Amalka, she was going into the king. Uvachein, I'm going into the king. And that is the start of living of this reality where Hashem is real. Hashem is in my life. Hashem is here and I can talk to him. I can call to him. So says Rav Pinkus, he takes this further in really a beautiful mashal. So he says, going to the left side, he says, and there's a mashal, umashal nachon ala kriya. There's a beautiful parable to be able to talk about what this means to call out to Hashem. So imagine, he describes, I'll say it outside, imagine a person is going and he's traveling through the night and it's dark and he has a certain amount of money with him and all of a sudden he's attacked. He's attacked by robbers, by people who wish to kill him, who wish to rob him, take his money. And in that moment, a police car starts driving by. So of course, what's he going to do? So he sees and he screams with all his strength. Hello, hello, mishtara. Hello, police, help, help, help. He screams to them. They come and they help him. But he says, what if they keep passing by? What if they don't hear him? So then he'll cry further. Hitzilu, no, save me, help me, come. He's calling to the police because he knows that they're the ones who can help him. There were so many other people, so many other cars maybe passing by, says Rav Pinkus, but he didn't call out to the cars, to the random people, because he knew that the police were nearby. And so he's going to call directly to the police. So says Rav Pinkus, so we can be traveling through life and we can be going through these darkened places and we might need help. And so we could just call to anyone, anywhere, and for help. Or we could directly call the direct line, the 911 line that we have directly to Hashem. Not only is that a number that we can call, and then we realize who to call to and how to call, but it gives us a sense, not just a comfort knowing that Hashem can help us, but there's a bitachon, there's a certain simcha, a trust, and a happiness that comes with that, because I realize I know who to call for help. I know who to direct my help to, or my request for help. That's this idea, by the way, of the bitachon, the trust that comes from that, the Emunah that comes from that is tremendous. This idea of Emunah, if we tried to translate the word Emunah, I think we've spoken about this before, but this idea of Emunah we would probably translate as faith, right? So it's accurate, it's true, but there's another facet to it, and that is Emunah. One of the first times the word Emunah comes, we see it by Moshe Rabbeinu when his hands are up in the air and they're being held up. And at that point, we say that Yadav Emunahim, that his hands were faithful. What about his hands were faithful? Faithful means in the sense that they were static, meaning that they were the status quo. They would stay that way. We could trust that they would be there and that they would stay up now. And that's this idea about the relationship that we have with the Ribono Shel Olam. We call it Emunah, we call it faith, but it doesn't just mean faith. I believe he exists. I believe he's real. But it's a belief in the relationship that it's constant. That's the word, constant. It's there. That's this idea of Emunah. And so it brings a certain level of simcha, a certain level of joy, happiness, realizing, wow, I have that constant relationship with him. I know the direct number to him. I can call for help. And so that's how he describes this. He says, imagine now a person is going and they need help in whatever aspect of life. So a person can cry. Hello, hello, Hashem, help. And that's, of course, what we find by Moshe Rabbeinu. So throughout Slichos, we're going to say, V'yavor Hashem al panav, because Moshe Rabbeinu was exposed. Moshe Rabbeinu is having his discussion with Hashem post our biggest sin, our biggest mistake. after we sinned with the Egel, after the whole episode of the golden calf. So then Moshe Rabbeinu has to talk with Hashem to save us. And when he sees that everything is going to be lost, when he sees this idea that the entire purpose of creation, that we, the Jewish nation, should be here, we should be able to accept the Torah, learn the Torah, have the relationship with Hashem, when he sees that's at risk. So Vayavor Hashem al panav, the Hashem, the Shechina, passes by him. And Vayikra, and Moshe Rabbeinu called out, Vayikra, he calls, Hashem, Hashem. And he screams the 13 midas of Rachmim, he screams to Hashem. That's this idea of Kriya, of calling out to Hashem, because he realizes at that point, no, Hashem, help us. And he tries to evoke the names of mercy and to be able to have Hashem answer the prayers to help sustain us, to help keep us going. So that's this idea of Kriya, both that we see by Moshe Rabbeinu calling out, and it gives us a little bit more insight as we get to Slichos. We're going to be saying them so soon. Vayikra, that Moshe Rabbeinu screams, but not just screams, but he screams for help, knowing that it's directed straight towards Hashem as Hashem passes by. Just like we said in that mashal of the police passing by the person in need. So he screams, police, police, help. As we go through Slichos, as we get to Yom Kippur, so we're going to be screaming, Vayikra. And he called because Hashem, just like the police, passes by every single second, and I can call right to him and be able to pull him into my life to be able to help me. And so he says that's this idea of Kriya, that's the idea of what we say is going to be going on Rosh Hashanah. And it gives us chizuk, it should give us encouragement, knowing that part and parcel of this whole idea of Rosh Hashanah is to bring into this, bring to the forefront of our minds that Hashem is here, because that's true. It's true. He's right here. It's just up for us. It's up to us to be able to bring that to reality, at least within our own minds and our hearts. So then Rav Pinkus continues, and he says, just highlighting this. Again, imagine a person is beset by the Yetzer Hara. Imagine there's a moment where the Yetzer Hara tries to grab us, to do whatever it is, or to keep us from doing whatever it is. Each and every single one of us can think of an example on our own. And whatever that example in our mind is, imagine the Yetzer Hara is grabbing us, trying to pull us away or towards something that we just don't belong there. So then we scream to Hashem, Hashem, help me, help. The Yetzer Hara is trying to rob me. It's trying to rob me of all my values. It's trying to rob me of everything that I hold to be valuable in life. It's trying to rob me of my relationship with you, Hashem. And so just like a person screams to the police, so we scream to Hashem. We say, Hashem, help me. My God, Elokai, my God, the one I have a personal relationship the one I have Emunah in, the one I have Emunah in our relationship. That's what it means to be able to scream for help, to be able to say the Yetzer Hara is trying to take something away from me. It's trying to push me or pull me in another direction. So Hashem, help me. So that's, again, something that obviously stems from Rosh Hashanah, when that becomes a reality to us. So then come Aser Simei Tshuva, then come Yom Kippur. When that reality, I can start actually crying to Hashem, saying, and now that I realize how real you are, so how could it be that I sinned? How could it be that I made all these mistakes? If you had been real to me in that moment, just like we said by the Alter Rebbe, holding the shtender, banging it, saying even the shtender should realize that you, Hashem, created it. So had we had such a mindset, had we lived with such a mindset, so Hashem, we wouldn't have made these mistakes. And so as we come into the next year, as we come into the new year, we dive into Hashem, please help make that more of a reality in our minds. So that way the Yetzer Hara, when it comes to grab us or push us, so you're more real in my life. And you're more real in the sense that I'm going to be able to hold myself stronger. And I know I'm going to be able to call out to you at those moments. So that's this idea of Kriya. So once we have this reality that Hashem is right here, and I can call out to him just like I could dial or call out to the police passing by. So then that obligates us. It obligates us to be able to cry to Hashem, because it would be negligent. It would be crazy if I really believed that Hashem was right here and could help me, and I didn't call for help when the Yetzer Hara grabbed me, or when I really need something in life. So that's negligence. How could I not call out? How could I not dial 911 straight to Hashem? So that leads us to the second aspect of prayer that I think is going on in Rosh Hashanah, and that is Shava. That this idea of crying out in a certain level of hysteria, as Rav Pinkus describes it on the back page on as I said, page 36 through 37. that once we realize everything's from Hashem, and once we know that Hashem is here, so then the moment where I realize I'm beset by troubles, or I need help with something, or there's something truly necessary for my life, so then I'm going to express it. I'm going to say it to Hashem. And so says Rav Pinkus, this aspect of Shabbat that essentially stems from this knowledge that Hashem can answer, Hashem listens, Hashem hears us. He says in this the bottom right paragraph on the on page 36 to 37, "V'lachein sarich ha'adam kishemispalel la'akadosh baruch hu lahavin heitev mahu mebakesh v'ad kama hu tzarich as hadavar shemebakesh." So then we have to really sit down, like we talked about last week, and think, how badly do I need this? Because if I really need it badly, so I know exactly who to go to. But at the same time, if I'm really going to go into hysterics about it, and I'm really going to dial 911, so I should really check for a second. Is this something really I need that badly? And it's very meaningful for me and means a lot for my relationship with Hashem, for myself, for my existence. And when we realize how badly we might need it, how important whether it is for me or for Klal Yisrael or for a friend, so at that point, a person can really move themselves to hysterics, to cry, to be able to dap, knowing that Hashem answers, Hashem can hear, and Hashem's listening. And so, of course, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry. I'm going to call out to Him. So then Rav Pinkus describes so beautifully. I love this. When I saw this, it really, very much, I think, and Hashem will change how I certainly daven this line, and hopefully for anyone listening. And that is, so imagine when I realize the need for something, and imagine when it's true and it's real, the reality that Hashem is with me and Hashem is listening to me. And imagine when I daven these words, V'taher libeinu li'avdecha b'emes. Hashem, purify our hearts so that we can serve you in truth, so we can serve you properly. What is there anything more necessary in life than V'taher libeinu li'avdecha b'emes? Is there anything more necessary in life that I can ask from Hashem to be able to purify me, to be able to move me, to serve Him better, to be able to have a better relationship, to be a better person? Purify me. And when I sit with that, when I realize how important it is that I don't have life without that, if I'm not pure, or if I'm not on my way towards becoming pure, if I'm not trying to become a better person, if I'm not trying to serve Hashem, then blizel lama lo chayim. So says Rav Pinkus. So what is life? What is life without this? What is my life without that relationship? What is my life without the Torah? What is my life without idea of V'taher libeinu li'avdecha b'emes? What is it? And when I realize how necessary it is for me, how necessary, how needed it is, so it becomes so pressing. And at that point, of course, I'm going to daven that differently, and I'm going to request that so badly and so strongly from Hashem. But it all comes and preceded by the awareness that Hashem hears, that He's listening, and I can call out to Him, stemming from this idea of tefillah, this aspect of prayer called kriya. The awareness that He is right here. And of course, then that leads us to the next level. And that is, I was aware that Hashem is here. And therefore, I know who I can ask, and I cry out, and sometimes in hysteria, but at least I can express myself what I need. And then sometimes we move to the next level. And that is where I don't even have any more words to be able to express what I need. Either I'm so moved or I'm so broken that all I can do is cry. I can't even say words. And that, says Rav Pinkus, is this idea of tzaka, of crying out. And that, of course, is the shofar. It's where we take the shofar and we blow the sounds of different aspects, different ways of crying. Because at some point in my life, I don't even have the words to express what I need. Sometimes I don't even have the words. And even if I had the words, I can't get them out just because all I can do is sigh, or all I can do is cry, because that's all I can get out. In the moments that a person is going through whatever they're going through, and just the craft, just the sigh, that itself is a tefillah, that itself is a prayer, because it's not just a sigh, it's a sigh with the knowledge, okay, so Hashem hears that too. And then of course, when we're moved, we're so moved, and when we don't even have the words, we don't know how to express ourselves. So that too, Hashem hears that, and certainly when it comes out as a cry. As it says Rav Pinkus on the left-hand side, page 42 through 43, he says, "Kasher ha'adam omei b'tefillah, v'choker b'daito amatzavo, v'al hasakana g'dola shu nasum ba." When a person sits down, or he's standing there in davening, and he begins to think, and he thinks about his situation, he thinks about the danger that he's in, that Klal Yisrael's in, that other Jews might be in. U'b'kerev libo tzoek el Hashem, umefarish bakashaso harezu tefillah shava. And he's able to express exactly what he needs or exactly the issue. So that's shava. Amnam tzaka hi yoser mizeh. But crying out tzaka is something more. The doma hadavar la'echad shaholich b'derech upitom omed l'negdo listim im cherev chada. And you know what tzaka is like? It's like when all of a sudden, like our previous mashal, I'm attacked. And I cry out and I say, please, please help me. I'm being attacked. And that would be shava. That would be crying out necessarily so and exactly in expressing what I need. And imagine the police don't come. Imagine I feel like they didn't hear me. So what's a person going to do at that moment? They'll shriek. They'll cry. It'll be this moment of desperation where they'll cry because they can't get any more words out, because it's just the emotional cry of I need help. And that's this idea of tzaka that's expressed by the shofar. And I think it's sometimes also the shofar and this idea of tzaka is not just because I can't say the words anymore because I'm in hysterics. But I think sometimes we don't even know what we need to daven for. I think sometimes, like we said last week, sometimes when we're davening, we think we need this, but really we need something else, but we don't realize. And sometimes there are other things in life that I just don't even think about that are so necessary. And so we say before we daven the Amida, we say Hashem sefasai tiftach ufi agid tilasecha, part and parcel of Hashem, open my mouth, help me ask, help me express what I need, because I don't even need what I need. As a fulfillment of the pasuk, the hagil libi lefanecha, that Hashem, you know my heart, and I don't even know my heart sometimes. So please take all the needs, all the worries, all the wants that are in my heart that I don't even know how to express them, and turn them into prayer, and let that be the prayers that you, Hashem, answer. But again, that all stems, I think, from this process of first with the awareness that we stand before Hashem, that we stand before Hamelech, just like Esther Amalka as she enters or she prepares and knows she's going to enter into the king's chambers. And then that leads us to be able to realize, so who else are we able to ask? Who else are we able to talk to? And therefore we can express ourselves, leading and culminating at the shofar, where we can't even express ourselves anymore. We don't even know how to express ourselves. And at that point, we just say, so Hashem, answer and hear, and please listen to all the tefillos, all the prayers, whether I'm expressing them through my mind, my mouth, or even my heart, and they haven't yet been expressed. I'll just end, and I apologize for anyone who knows the story, but every year I believe it's so important to share this, and certainly for anyone who hasn't heard it, it's Kedai, and even if you have heard it, it's Kedai. So I believe it was a Chernobyl Rebbe, was known to be very strong in his davening for a while. I believe it was the Chernobyl Rebbe, and one of his Hasidim, of course, wanted to know what he was davening about. So with tremendous chutzpah, he came up right next to him and started listening to what he was saying. And the Rebbe was saying as follows: Hashem, our cleaning help quit today, and we really need her. We really need her help. My wife really needs the help around the house. Hashem, can you put into this woman's mind that she come back to us, that, she'd be willing to be rehired? So fine. So the chassid walks away. Not only did he have the chutzpah to listen in, but he had the double chutzpah to then go over to the Rebbe afterwards and ask and said, Rebbe, what a person davens for? That's what you ask for? And the Rebbe looked at him and he said, who else am I going to ask? Who else am I going to ask? If it's real, if Hashem is a reality in our life, then it becomes real to us. Who else? Who else are we going to be able to ask? Who else should we ask? It's only Hashem. It's all Hashem. So I think it's a perspective to be able to take into Rosh Hashanah. We should have Ksiva Chesima Tova. And okay, so Mirza Hashem, see everyone next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.